Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Parent University Session Bullying Prevention 101 for Parents and Families. My name is Jerry Ilar, the Public Events and Engagement Coordinator on the Communications and Engagement Office. I want to thank you for joining us today for our series of Parent University Sessions. Last week, or the past couple weeks for the month of October, we were highlighting college and career. Everywhere from FAFSA 101 to college admissions, and then also supporting your student through the admissions process and through college. And so I want to thank you for joining us this evening for this hour-long session. And I want to overview a couple of Parent University workshops that will be coming up for the month of October and November, and then a couple in December that we're still highlighting or figuring out the logistics for. So for October, today is bullying prevention. For next week, Thursday, we have Carrie Larkin chatting about in-person and virtual learning for students with IEPs. And then for November, we have Aspen Parent Portal School Year 2021, and then Introduction to 504 on November 12th. And so you can sign up for all of these sessions at bit.ly/DCPS Parent U RSVP. And with the upcoming sessions that will be coming in December, those will be also posted there. And hopefully we'll have the new school year coming up sometime in November, December in 2021. And as a reminder, we do have a couple town hall or teletown halls. So we had one last night on October 21st at 5 p.m. And so for the next couple Wednesdays, October 28th at 5 p.m., we are covering facility and operation readiness. And then November 4 at 5 p.m. schedules Day in the Life Student Supports. And this is in partnership with the Mayor's Office. And so all of the RSVP links are included on the screen here. And so I do ask that for tonight, we do cover questions on bullying prevention, but if you do have questions about the Reopen Strong plan for your child in elementary schools, to please go to dcreopenstrong.com or to check out one of these teletown halls for any questions you may ask. Today, we are going to be focusing on any questions that pertain to bullying prevention. And then if you need access to subtitles or interpretation, we have Spanish interpretation that should be, the link should be in the Q&A chat. It should be bit.ly/DCPS Espanol. And if you need subtitles, we have subtitles in English, Chinese, French, Vietnamese, and Spanish. And to access these captions or subtitles, there should be a gear icon in your bottom right of your screen. Click on that gear icon, press captions and subtitles, and choose the captions or subtitles that you need for today's session. And then for the Q&A feature, we ask that you can engage with us. There are a couple of questions that our presenter will be asking you to participate in throughout the session. And so go ahead, use the Q&A chat to engage with the question that's being asked, or if you have comments or questions, go ahead, use that Q&A box in the bottom right, and you can ask anonymously, or you can ask by sharing your name. If you do have a direct question that one of our support team members on the back end needs that you have specifically for your family or for your child, go ahead, mention that you need someone's email or to ask that that the question not be published and it's confidential. That way we can contact you. And then for the community agreement and going into today's session, we asked for 3 pieces: assume best intentions, go hard on ideas, not on people, and to accept non-closure. And without further ado, I do want to turn it over to Dr. Justin McClain, Manager for Student Behavior on the SEL School Culture Team in the Office of School Improvements and Supports. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. McClain.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Justin McClain. As Jerry mentioned, I do serve as the Manager of Student Behavior. Inside of that office, we also include and do a lot of work around special education, like supports, in regards to how we do with restorative practices. Bullying prevention is the topic we're going to discuss this evening, but we're also going to get a sprinkle of restorative practices inside of our presentation as well. So our outline for our agenda today, we're going to go over our welcoming norms. Our welcoming norms, our SEL connection, which we're going to ask that you do utilize that feature that Jerry already spoke to you about in regards to engaging, so that we can sort of open up the floor to hear some of your thoughts as well. Bullying prevention policy, our conflict versus bullying, the investigation process, some proactive strategies, as well as parental intervention and support. At DCPS, our core values are and will always be student first, equity, excellence, teamwork, courage, and joy. The fact that we're having a town hall or discussion here for Parent University in regards to bullying prevention 101, we are putting that student first, and we hope that you're going to be able to take back a couple of resources and understand how we operate here in DC Public Schools. This year, DC Public Schools is launching our trauma responsive schools model. Within that model, we have our 5 non-negotiables. Today's session is going to highlight, if you look at the second box, it's outlined in red, is going to highlight that every school teaches, models, reinforces school-wide behavior expectations for students and adults. The thing that we're going to really focus in on is that modeling piece, and the school-wide behavior and expectation is for students and adults, not just for the student. Moving into our SEL connection, if you could please drop your answer inside of the chat. Our SEL connection is coming from our social and cultural awareness competency of our social emotional learning framework. Answer this question: how has bullying changed since you were a student? How has bullying changed since you were a student? I'll give a moment for people to drop their answers inside of the chat. Think about it. If you're around your family and your children are present, ask them how bullying has changed even from when they were younger, or do they even see it in schools? From my own personal experience, I've noticed there's been a huge uptick in social media, because even though I graduated high school in 2000, it wasn't a strong presence of that back then in 2000. So that will be the big change that I've seen, but we'll move forward. And I thank you for your participation. This evening's learning outcomes, what we hope for people to get when they leave from this session are: understand the DCPS definition of bullying, distinguish the difference between bullying and conflict, learn the various resources available to prevent bullying, and how to converse with your child about the subject of bullying. What is the bullying prevention policy, which also includes cyberbullying? So the defining bullying here, the DCPS way, as you see on the screen before you, bullying means any severe, pervasive, or persistent act or conduct, whether physical, electronic, or verbal, that may be used on a student's actual or perceived. And as you see listed in the boxes below, the ones that really point out and highlight that we're seeing a lot of, that race, color, ethnicity, religion, or national origin, we see a lot of those things taking place over the last year. However, because we partner with our equity team, we are able to sort of address these concerns immediately. If you would like to unpack the rest of the bullying policy to see every piece of it, there is a hyperlink at the bottom of the screen at dcps.dc.gov/bullying. There you can access the entire policy. Some of the key terms that we want you to understand that so that the incident will meet the criteria of bullying are: is the incident severe? Is it pervasive? And is it persistent? Not necessarily, it does not have to meet all 3 of these definitions. It has to only meet 1. There will be times that you will see all 3 of these. However, as long as it meets one of the guidelines of severe, pervasive, or persistent, we will then open and launch an investigation into the allegations of bullying. Keep in mind these 3 terms as we move throughout this presentation. We understand that bullying can happen anywhere. We understand that it takes on many different forms. On the screen, you see that you do have several different ways that we have identified bullying, or ways that bullying takes place in our buildings. There's the act of physical bullying, where you have the pushing and the shoving, as you see in the first section. There's also keeping certain people out of the group, making them feel isolated or excluded from the practices of what's going on. Spreading bad rumors, the he say, she say. There's the pointing out someone or outing them, teasing them about something, the way they look, or the way they might, the smell, or how they dress. And then, as you see in the very last one, the racial or sexual bullying. That also refers more so to along the lines of the outing and things of that nature. Bullying takes on many different forms. These are just some of those forms that it takes on. Cyberbullying is a huge thing that we are really truly focused in on, especially given that we are in our virtual posture. The one thing that we want to make sure that everyone understands, when we look at this, it comes out that it is willful and repeated harm inflicted using computers, cell phones, and other electronic devices. The key phrase there that we want to focus in on, even though it is still cyberbullying, is repeated harm inflicted. That meets the guidelines of severe, persistent, because it is repeated, and pervasive. There are several ways, as you see listed here, that people can utilize electronics to communicate or get their point across for bullying. Sending mean text messages, emails, posting nasty or derogatory pictures, or what we like to say is our new term of fraping, using someone else's username to spread names and rumors about people, going in, or catfishing, where you would go in and you can present yourself as someone else and make posts about someone else. Let's engage in something. So for our first scenario, I'm going to read to you the blue box. I ask that as I'm reading through the blue box, you're also looking to reflect on some of the questions that you see on the screen. The questions are, what should the mother do first? How should Jonathan be allowed to use his phone? And how do we make things right? The scenario reads, a mother is walking by her son, Jonathan, while he is on his iPhone and notices he keeps hiding the screen and pretending that he isn't doing anything when she walks by or gets close to him. Upon further observation, the mother sees that Jonathan is sending out hateful tweets via what seems to be a Twitter account he has not set up to impersonate someone that he has now set up to impersonate someone else. Inside of the chat, engage with us in responding to the questions. What should the mother do first in this situation? How should Jonathan be allowed to use his phone moving forward? Or should he be allowed to use his phone? How can things be made right as it relates to those he has hurt or humiliated with his online post? I'll pause and give a moment for you guys to respond to that, and then I'll provide a couple of answers or responses that I believe could be deemed appropriate. Thank you for those who put answers into the chat. So when we say what should the mother do first, I would assume that because Jonathan still lives at home and he's trying to hide what he's doing, he might not be old enough to pay for his phone. So the first thing mom can do is request the phone or take the phone from Jonathan. Upon taking the phone from him, what she possibly could do next is engage him in conversations around, one, who created the account? How are you able to do, why are you doing this? Who are you sending these messages to? And what is the anticipated outcome that you're hoping to achieve based upon sending out these messages? So engaging in some type of dialogue to understand the root cause of why your child is doing this. How should Jonathan be allowed to use his phone moving forward? That is at the determination of you, the parent, to determine how your child will use their phone. Are we going to say you're only allowed to use your phone for school-related activities? Or we'll hold on to your phone unless you're going outside and you need to get in contact with me, or I need to get in contact with you. So setting up those guidelines is a really good way to secure and ensure that you are monitoring your child's activity. How should things be made right with those that he hurt? Do your research. Find out who received it, what was the message that was sent out, and then address it accordingly afterwards. Maybe it is following up if it's a school-related incident with school. Maybe it's something where you might have to involve MPD if it's a local situation. Those are just a couple of responses. However, I'm looking forward to seeing some of the things you put into the chat. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit earlier around what were some of the examples of bullying and how it takes on many different forms. These, according to our research, looking over at Casper Sky Labs, these are the top 10 forms of cyberbullying that we have seen throughout our nation. Exclusion, cyber stalking, fraping, harassment, trolling, fake profiles, trickery, outing, catfishing, and dissing. All of these are deemed cyberbullying. My team has trained the district on all of these to look for these for cyberbullying. In addition to that, if you yourself would like to research these and understand a little bit more about each one of them and what they mean, please, we encourage you to take that. The link is at the bottom there for the top forms of cyberbullying. It is a YouTube video, so you can feel free to watch the video. It's around 3 to 4 minutes, but it's a fun way to engage and interact and have that discussion with your child around bullying and cyberbullying. Now we're going to move into our conflict versus bullying. This is a huge topic because there is a difference between the two. So let's dive into it. When we think about conflict is that disagreement or the argument in which both sides express their views. It's equal power, or it's friendly. It's a casual, back and forth, but no one is trying to gain anything. If someone is harmed, it is unintentional, and then the person who committed that feels remorse or is apologetic around their statements, around what they said. They're not trying to impose or inflict any type of pain, harm, or humiliation. With that one, we call that conflict. When you have conflict and it occurs in your schools, the same way that you have conflict maybe at home, you resolve it. Hopefully you resolve it by talking. You're able to talk things through. For that, we will implement a restorative practice. We can have restorative conversations. We can have impromptu conversations. On the student behavior team, on the social emotional learning team as well, we train folks and throughout our district on the use of restorative practices. I want to say it was last month, we had a parent university featuring restorative practices with your families and how you can implement those things there. That is how we would look to resolve our conflicts. However, as you'll see on the next slide, when we look at bullying is something totally different. Bullying, thank you. Bullying is the negative behavior directed by someone exerting power and control over another person. As you see the difference from the previous slide to this one, there's an imbalance of power. It is intentional. This person wants to cause harm. They want to cause pain. They feel no remorse. They make no effort to problem solve. For this one, we would deem this bullying. Based upon the vocabulary that you see here listed out, you can see that it will definitely meet the criteria of severe, pervasive, and persistent. So let's chat some more. Like I said, we want to make this engaging, so hopefully you are dropping a lot of questions or answers, or you're engaging with your family around this topic. Bullying can often be very challenging to identify. What are some of the reasons that you believe bullying can be hard to identify? Take a moment, drop your answers in the chat, talk it amongst your friends in your home. But at the same time, I would prefer you drop them in the chat so we have something to engage and talk about. Why is it hard to identify bullying, and what are some of those reasons? Going to take a moment. All right. Okay. Thank you guys for dropping those thoughts into the chat. Why it might be hard to identify, not only so much at school, but even maybe in home or in your communities. Why would it be hard to identify? So I believe coming up on our next slide, we're going to show you exactly what are some of those things and reasons why it's hard to identify bullying. It's hard to identify because It happens in places that were well not supervised by adults, sometimes hard to detect. Students believe adults won't do anything about it. They believe adults will make it worse. It's viewed as snitching and the fear of retaliation. I want to pause for a second and actually address the one where it says it's viewed as snitching. And this was something that I really had to unpack, the word snitching. What does it mean? You know, the typical response is, oh, you tattled on me, or you told on me. But that's not really the snitch aspect of it. When you break down the actual definition of the word snitch, as one of our deans at H.D. Woodson, Dean Bird stated in one of our previous training sessions, snitching is when I'm doing the same thing as you, but I'm going to tell so that way I get out of trouble or I'm not as severely consequenced as you might be. And because of that, it will be deemed snitching. I'm going to tell on you so that you get the brunt of the punishment and I get a lesser punishment. That is where we would deem the word snitching. Some people look at it as, you know, you're snitching, and again, the fear of retaliation. These are just 6 of the reasons why. Perhaps you had some of these things logged in or you dropped some of these things in our chat. If you did not, please, by all means, keep these thoughts in mind when we're thinking through what bullying actually could be. So when we look at where bullying happens and where it takes place, we already showed you where or why it's hard to detect. These are just some of the places where it occurs. Unfortunately, it can happen on school premises. It can happen at school-sponsored activities and events. It happens on public transportation all the time, and it's not just among students. You can witness adults having these bullying issues, right? I'm going to push past you to get onto the bus before you. I'm jumping the line. I dare you to say something to me. And then, of course, as we discussed earlier, the cyberbullying aspect on things, where people they feel the need to hide behind the computer in order to state their claim or to humiliate or embarrass folks. These are just some of the places it can take place. Feel free to drop in the chat wherever you might think you could see bullying in other places. Maybe you see it at the mall, you can see it at a restaurant. It varies. Bullying can take place in your home. So there is no right or wrong answer as to where bullying can take place, but we do want to make sure that we're able to get people to understand the difference between conflict versus bullying, as we stated earlier. So let's look at some of these proactive strategies. Some of the proactive strategies that we've done already in our schools. Every school has a trained bullying prevention point of contact. We've encouraged that they create and share a school response to bullying to all stakeholders. What I mean by that is our bullying prevention point of contact is required to not only attend a 3-hour one-day training that's conducted by my team. They're also required to go back to the school, have that same presentation catered to their specific building for their staff and for their parents. You can form a bullying task force at your buildings. That could consist of members of the leadership team, members of the non-instructional staff team, could be teachers involved, coaches can be involved. I do recall at one school, the custodian was involved because he was the one guy that had a relationship with the student. So the task force, it's all about putting that student first and trying to rid our buildings of bullies. We ask that every school post the DCPS bullying policy on their websites. With that, some have also went a step further and they placed a QR code on their website so that while we are in our virtual posture or when we start moving back into our hybrid posture, when we move into a hybrid model, if there are allegations of bullying, students can feel comfortable or parents can feel comfortable enough to report it without having to be seen going into someone's office, without being pulled out of a classroom. They're able to report that anonymously using the QR code. Also, teaching those social emotional learning skills as ways to either calm yourself down, how to think through. We use a very good tool from our partnership with Turnaround for Children, which is titled our Think, Choose, Do, and Feel. Through that, what did you think about during that time period? This can be, what were you feeling? What did you do, and what would you choose to do differently if that opportunity came again? This can be used for either the victim slash target or the aggressor in the situation. And then again, we ask that schools dedicate a bulletin board to promote bullying prevention in their buildings. And that bulletin board should highlight a couple of key features. We talked about restorative practices a little bit earlier, just wanting to bring out how restorative practices can help build that sense of community. It strengthens those connections. It creates a positive classroom and school culture and environment. The increase of the social emotional learning. And then the big piece, I think, as it relates to bullying or with conflict, you can help develop skills to resolve those conflicts and problem solve. So we have several trainings that we do throughout the month on restorative practices for our schools. We train our school district on restorative practices on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of each month. And then we actually will add in an additional learning opportunity, either at the school-based level, where certain schools have reached out to us to come to their buildings and provide that training as well, or do a deeper dive with their whole staff. Inside of our school buildings, we have what's called our Panorama Data. With our Panorama Data, our goal is to make students feel 100% loved, challenged, and prepared. In order for us to achieve that goal, we want to focus and we lean into the loved category, which gives our students that sense of belonging in our buildings to help create that bully-free atmosphere. As you see here, we have programs designed to meet each kid, each student, each family on their grade level. So we use Teach Kindness for our elementary schools. We use No Place for Hate for some of our secondary schools. And we have the Special Olympics program that we use to support our students with disabilities. Additionally, we have a program called EverFi. When we use the use of EverFi, I know right here it says all schools. It supports grades 2nd through 12th grade. They offer a plethora of materials and resources. A lot of our schools are using these programs. I would just like to highlight a few. For Teach Kindness, I would like to shout out Neville Thomas for utilizing and implementing the Teach Kindness model. For No Place for Hate, I would highlight and shout out Stuart Hobson, as well as Jefferson Academy. For our Special Olympics program, Wilson High School, as well as River Terrace. And for EverFi, again, we're going to come right on back over to Stuart Hobson. They are doing an excellent job of implementing these resources, and kudos to all those schools that were just mentioned. And here they are. So that was great. HD Woodson, let me also shout them out. No disrespect to the mighty warriors of HD Woodson STEM High School. Jefferson Academy, again, for No Place for Hate. Neville Thomas, as well as you see Stuart Hobson. So again, excellent job. You're doing a great job. Keep going. So when you think about bullying, we want to make sure that we are able to provide those supports for the target or the alleged victim in this situation. The way that we provide support to the target, one, we investigate. If our investigation leads us to the path that, yes, this is deemed bullying, not conflict, we will create a safety plan. That safety plan will outline the parameters in which the target and the aggressor will navigate through the building. It will help outline different supports. If that means we have to loop in or do a referral to our school mental health, we will do that as well. We can change schedules. We can change classrooms. Whatever it would take to make the target or victim feel safe to come to school, so that the parent feels safe sending their kids to our school, we're able to do so. On the flip side of that, you have to be willing to also support the aggressor. The reason we want to still support the aggressor is so that we can eliminate repeat behaviors, and then we can help them lose the term or the title of being the bully. So to support the aggressor, we offer social emotional learning strategies. I've already shared with you the think, feel, choose, do strategy. We also have our emotional awareness, our head, hands, and heart are just 2 additional strategies that we use, also are brought to us given to us and provided for us by our Turnaround for Children partnership. We can create a behavior contract The one thing I want to break the difference down between the supports for the aggressor and for the target. For the target, they receive a safety plan. For the aggressor, they receive a behavior contract. Because we are providing a safety plan to the victim, we want to make sure that the aggressor is made aware of what is within inside of that, so they do not break that safety plan. Therefore, creating the contract will help ensure that we do not have that repeat behavior. And again, a referral to your school mental health can help promote and provide those additional resources and those guidance sessions, or as we say in the restorative practice world, those impromptu conversations that might be needed in order to change the behavior. Everyone is big on show me the data. So this is our data over the last couple of years. So if we look at in the orange and blue box, you'll see that we did pretty decent this past school year from 2019 to 2020. Despite school ending early, I'm very happy to state that we did not have any reports of cyberbullying that took place during our at-home learning from March to May. You'll see that for that year, also this past school year, we were 76 less allegations or incidents of bullying. We look over at our youth risk behavior survey. This is something that is taken at the end of every year and throughout the school year for our middle schools and high schools. I'll give you a moment to review that data. And I want to make sure that I highlight here that having a trusted adult in the building, 67% of our schools, our middle schools, stated they have a trusted adult in the building, and 66% of our students in high school have a trusted adult in the building they can go and talk to. I'll give you a moment, as I stated, to review some of these numbers here. Thank you. I mentioned to you before about our Panorama data and wanting students to feel loved, challenged, and prepared. With that, you see here on the screen now, in that love index, when we look under what is involved in that. In 2017, 18, 19, these are the numbers. We saw 59%, 58%, and 58%. In order for us to gain a true, accurate approach and feeling of what's going and having kids feel that sense of belonging in our buildings, these are the 5 guiding questions that are in that sense of belonging quadrant or question portion of the Panorama survey. With that Panorama survey, we need 100% of our students in our buildings to actually take the survey so that we can give an accurate reading going out. So these numbers are based upon the percentage of folks that actually completed and filled out the survey. Even though we are above 50%, we are striving for 100% of our students feeling loved, challenged, and prepared. Now, let's look at that investigation process so that we can determine, so that you understand what we actually do. The report is received by our bullying prevention point of contact at the building. That report can be given by first person, so the victim or target can come right up and make that report allegation to the POC themselves. The next thing with that, or it can be received by a third party person, meaning someone else, another adult, another friend can go and give that allegation. As soon as the word bullying is mentioned to the POC, they are required to launch and begin an investigation. The next step is you want them to decide. We make that after the investigation, we want to decide or determine, is this conflict or is this bullying? Once that, as we stated earlier, if it is deemed conflict, we will look to resolve it by using a restorative practice. If it is deemed bullying, we will then move forward with creating a safety plan and determining next steps. That includes, as I stated, the safety plan for the victim and then the behavior contract for the aggressor. Both of these things, whether it's deemed bullying, if it's confirmed bullying, or if it is not confirmed bullying, all these things are documented inside of our student behavior tracker, also known as SBT, and we will upload all investigative materials into the database for future reference if needed. Let's look at the parental interventions and supports. So, when creating this PowerPoint presentation, we collaborated with our school of mental health Shout outs to Mr. Nigel Jackson, the Director of School Mental Health. These are just a couple things that parents can do in order to engage their child in conversations around it. We want to make sure we use affirmative language. So there's the affirmations piece. Question, reassuring them that, hey, this is not your fault. How can I help you? Support, support them through this process. It's not easy for them to come and communicate to you, so please don't dismiss it. And I think the biggest one out of all three of these is the listening. My mother always taught me God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you can do twice as much listening as you do talking. So therefore, please, it's very important that you listen when your child comes to you and says, I'm being bullied. To help parents further understand and support their children while at home, we have provided some different resources and broke them down by grade level for you. So we have books for our elementary schools, middle and high schools, as well as some websites that can be used for everybody. Some of the key books that I would like to highlight for elementary school that I have used even with my own children: Nathan and the Really Big Bully, Llama Llama and the Bully Goat. Llama Llama and the Bully Goat is probably one of my favorite elementary books when it comes to trying to teach this to younger children. Hurricane Child is an excellent book for our middle schools. And the one I would really truly highlight for our high school, Who Will Tell My Brother? It's like a tearjerker in a sense. So it really gets at that social emotional piece. But I would strongly encourage that parents, you get that for your child if they have experienced it, or if you believe that your child could eventually or has the potential to become a bully. Provide these resources. And then the websites, they offer various things that you can go on to, and you are able to pull from them and understand and unpack bullying on a whole different level. I would shout out, and you make sure and point out Edutopia, the film festival. They have, I think it's 5 or 6 short films, no more than 5 to 10 minutes each, that you can watch and engage your children with. Also, you'll notice that we have the 2 books written over here by Michelle Barba. With those 2 books, those are parent resources. I actually use both of them when crafting out some of our trainings for the district. By all means, they are excellent resources and they are very affordable. Each one of these links takes you to either Amazon or one of our program partnerships that we use for our prevention programs. So with DCPS going in with our coming back to school and reopening strong piece, we want to connect it to our 3 R's: relationships, routines, and resilience. The relationships component that we want to do is establish a relationship with a trusted staff member at the school. I encourage that to be done by both the parent as well as the student. Routines, understand the process to report an allegation of bullying, and then the resilience, connecting to the school to learn the resources to educate your child on bullying prevention. That concludes me actually talking through the presentation right now. If there are any questions, Jerry, I will wait to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Dr. McClain. For attendees on the other side, go ahead, put in some of your questions that you may have. I do have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Referring to the investigative process, just a general question about how long is a process and what does the communication look like? Is it receiving a phone call? Is it all done through emails? The links of meetings? And then as a follow-up, during the investigative process, what, more of a general question, what are some of the laws and policies in DC that are around bullying, but what would be the factor that you would have to include MPD in terms of breaking any laws around bullying during the investigative process? Because the hope is not to include MPD and to manage everything between the perpetrator and then the victim or the target, and hopefully everything is handled through the school, but what would be that factor where we do have to include outside resources?
Thank you. I'm gonna see if I can answer all those. I want to go back and start with the investigation process. You asked, what was it? I believe the question was, what is the time frame? So bullying allegations They vary from situation to situation. It all depends on how many people are involved in the investigation. We would hate to rush to judgment without knowing all the facts and getting all the information from all witnesses, all participants. So in some cases, the fastest I've seen investigations take place have been maybe 2 to 3 days. The longest time, because there were more participants involved, could take anywhere from 5 to 6 days. And those are school days, not counting weekends. So that, I believe that answers that question. The next question, if I can recall, you asking the policy in regards to what is the policies that are put in place. So with DCPS, all of our policies are outlined on dcps.dc.gov/bullying. That policy and the protocols and procedures are listed on there. So it will actually spell out what we do, when we do it, why we do it, and who actually is open to receive those services. And I know you had another question, but it escapes me at this moment. So
yeah,
you can remind
along with policies, are there specific laws within DC or just nationally around bullying that we should be aware of? Or is it just with whatever the breaking the law would be in terms of bullying?
So our bullying policy, I don't want to misspeak or around that topic, but our policy that we have for DC Public Schools is aligned to the same policy that is generated and shared through the Office of Human Rights. It is a federal law, so it also goes and meets the criteria with OSSI, the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. So for DC, for the District of Columbia, all of our government agencies pretty much have the same literature around bullying. So the same policy, it's just adjusted depending on which branch of the government that you're dealing with. And I know you had a question around MPD and at what level does MPD get involved? MPD can be Metropolitan Police Department, our DC Public Schools Police, Metro Transit Police. They can become involved in bullying at any phase, depending on when or who the parent reports it to. If it takes place at the school, we do ask that you come to the school with it first. We actually have trained our DCPS police, Metro Transit Police, on our bullying prevention guidance that we provided to DC Public Schools. So they are aware. They have been provided a list of our bullying points of contact as well, so that they're able to reach out to the specific schools and ask and make them aware of, hey, I believe that there's an investigation that you might want to take a look into based upon this report that we received. So we do ask that the school is notified first before MPD is involved so that we can try. MPD can be called and brought into play if it becomes very physical or becomes violent. If weapons become involved into it, MPD will be brought in. If a parent, for whatever odd reason, is dissatisfied, however, with the outcome of the investigation that the school did, their next step, if they are not happy with how the school investigated or the outcome, will be to contact our DCPS care team. They can be reached at dcps.care, C-A-R-E, which stands for Comprehensive Alternative Resolutions of Equity, also known as our grievance team. And they will be more than happy to help support in determining, did the POC get it correct at the school?
Thank you, Dr. McClain. That was actually going to be my follow-up question. So
good.
I think that's definitely helpful that you were able to explain the care team for people who don't know who that is. And so another question I have, there was a question earlier in the chat, just in public, where you see kids or students teasing or joning each other on the bus. Like, what are some helpful steps for us to either intervene or help who you think may be being bullied? Or I think this kind of goes back to, is it a conflict, is it bullying, or is it just friends teasing each other? So do you have any helpful tips for whether it's a parent who sees this on a bus or in public, or for young adults, or just anyone walking or out in public on the bus, the metro, or around the school, and you see groups of people or groups of students or two students just either teasing, how do you kind of intervene to make sure that they're okay and it's not just like friends having friendly banter with each other?
Great question. I would look at it from a couple different ways. The first way I would look at it is, number one, make sure that you are in a position to assist as the adult who wants to intervene. When I say in a position to assist, are you physically and mentally prepared? Looking at, because there's safety in numbers. So if there are 4 or 5 young people that are having this, are bullying this other person, this other student, you might want to, just err on the side of caution, alert either the metro driver, alert the station manager. If you see this taking place, if you're able to see that you're near a school, go to that school, make the report there, because they can get in contact with our school resource officers. If you believe that things are going to escalate and get out of hand, by all means, you yourself at that point, if you see this taking place, it's after school hours, there's no one around, and you want to support and intervene, you can alert through 911 to bring assistance to that child. However, some of our schools, or a good portion of our schools, they do wear uniforms. And because we do offer trainings and supports with our DCPS police, Metro Transit Police, and our school resource officers, they have all been given my contact information as well as my specialist contact information that they can reach out to us to make us aware that, for example, there's a situation going on at X Academy, and we would like, I believe that you might want to, poke your head over here to see what's going on. We will then help and reach out in collaborative effort to investigate the issue that's taking place and how to intervene and provide supports that way.
Thank you. I think this might be one of our last questions, and this was one of our questions through our RSVP process. There was a question about how does a student defend themselves? And so I think more of the question is like, what tools or tricks should students be utilizing that they can handle the situation on their own, or what is the factor where they should be addressing an adult or getting help if they are being bullied?
Again, excellent question. I think the very first thing is making sure, again, if you have an opportunity to leave, that's that fight or flight mentality. If you have the opportunity, or you're in a position to flight, that you leave, run, go seek help, get to an adult, get to another area where there's more people around, there's more security, more surveillance, things like that. I will never encourage a student to fight, but I also understand that sometimes it is what it is, correct? So, but with that, we will encourage students to sort of calm down, walk themselves down, try to get out, find out as quickly as possible. I'm a father myself of 2 teenage daughters. With that, I sit up all the time and I will say, I give my daughter, notify the adult if they're nearby. If it continues, make a lot of noise, cause a distraction, cause it some attention to come to you so that you're able to receive some support. I would hope that as adults, that if we were to see a child in need who's screaming at the top of their lungs that I need help, that we would try at least to come near the area. That could hopefully that should have the bully leave the area, and that child can then safely report to their parents or to a nearby security officer.
Thank you, Dr. McClain, for the honest answer, and also sharing your vulnerability of sharing that you have 2 daughters yourself. I'm going to give a little bit of time to go over some next steps. While if people on the attendee side have additional questions, go ahead and use that Q&A chat. We may end the session a little bit early, but as we're waiting for more questions to come through, we do have the contact information for a couple other people on the team. So we have Danielle Butler-Neal, who has been answering some of your questions, who is the Restorative Practices Specialist, and that email is there, danielle.butler-neal@k12.dc.gov. We have Anise Walker, Restorative Practice Specialist for middle and high schools, and that's anise.walker@k12.dc.gov. Then we have Dr. Justin McClain for the Manager for Student Behavior, and that's justin.mcclain@k12.dc.gov, which should be in the chat as well. So if you have any questions whether it's a current issue or if you just want to know more, go ahead, email these 3 people and they'll be able to answer your question or point you in the right direction of where to grab supports. And then we do want to thank you for attending tonight's session. And then for upcoming sessions, today we just finished bullying prevention. For next week, Thursday, we have Carrie Larkin talking about in-person and virtual learning for our students with IEPs. And then for November 5th, we have Aspen Parent Portal School Year 2021. And then on November 12th, Introduction to 504. To be completely transparent with 504, I didn't know what 504 was until we were able to talk about the parent or with the content team who would be leading that. And so if your student has any hindrance in their learning, whether it's a physical or mental impairment, filing a 504 will help you get the accommodations needed to advocate for your student to make sure that they feel successful in their learning, both in virtual and in-person learning. So if you're interested in learning more about that, go ahead, attend on November 12th on Thursday from 5:30 to 6:30. And just a reminder, all of our Parent University sessions are scheduled from 5:30 to 6:30 every Thursday. And so we're hoping to keep that schedule. And you can register at bit.ly/DCPS Parent U RSVP. And then our upcoming teletown halls for October 28th and then November 4th for specifically our Reopen Strong. We have a couple of our panels and you can join by phone, you can join by computer, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, or on the mayor's Twitter page, and also on TV for DCN channel 16. And so you can RSVP for any of those links or just go ahead, tune in on any of the social media sites for getting any of your questions about DCPS Reopen Strong. And then our past Parent University sessions can be found on YouTube at bit.ly/ParentU Reopen Strong or Parent U Vids. Those are 2 links that you can go to. And there was a question about, can we get access to the PowerPoint presentation or the recording? And so you can find the recording on YouTube, and then we can also send out the presentation to you in a PDF form. And then for additional questions, go ahead, visit DCPS Reopen Strong for additional resources on Reopen Strong, and then let us know how we did by going to bit.ly/ParentUEval19 for a quick survey. And then for just general questions, email us at parentu@k12.dc.gov. And with that, I want to give your time back because I know everyone is super busy and probably tired of being in front of their screen. So I want to thank you for joining us, and I also want to thank Dr. McClain and his team for joining us today for tonight's session. And if you have additional questions, please email us at parentu@k12.dc.gov, and we hope to see you at our next Parent U session.